From the moment Lena Rojas stepped out of the bus that morning, she felt something strange in the air. The wind was sharper. The sky looked darker. Even the people walking toward the tall glass building of Harvalin Technologies moved differently faster. Quieter, as if they were trying to avoid something. Lena hugged her small laptop bag against her chest, hoping the day would be kind. She was tired. Her mother had been sick all night, and she barely slept. But she kept telling herself she could handle one more day. She always found a way. The moment she entered the lobby, she heard low whispers. People were gathered in small circles, speaking almost in fear. He arrived early. He's already in the boardroom. Someone said he's intense. Intense. He looks like he eats people, Lena frowned, not understanding. She stepped toward the elevator and caught two managers staring at her. They weren't usually the type to gossip, yet even they seemed nervous. One of them whispered, "He's making changes today." The other replied, "He's different from the old CEO, much colder." Lena pressed the elevator button and tried to ignore the growing tension. She didn't know much about the new CEO, only that he was young, brilliant, strict, and had taken control of the company after his father retired abruptly. His name was Adrian Locke, and the media loved describing him as dangerously efficient, mysteriously private, and the silent storm. Lena didn't care about corporate storms. She just wanted peace. She wanted to finish her projects, keep her head down, and earn enough to take care of her mother. That was all she ever wanted. But peace didn't wait for her. The moment the elevator stopped on the 10th floor, she stepped out and felt her coworkers staring at her. Not with kindness. Not with judgment. With warning. Something was wrong. She didn't know why. Then everything froze. The door at the far end of the hallway opened, and a tall man stepped out. His presence was so strong that even people sitting at desks straightened instantly. He wore a charcoal suit that looked like it belonged to a man who didn't bend for anyone. His shoulders were broad, his posture firm, and his expression unreadable. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his jaw was set like stone. His eyes, however, were the strangest sharp controlled. But holding a feeling she couldn't understand, Adrian Locke, the new CEO, and he was walking straight toward her. Lena's breath caught. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't even know why she felt like she should run. People around her watched with curiosity, their necks stretching, their eyes widening. It felt like the whole floor held one long, painful breath. Adrian stopped exactly 2 steps in front of her. He didn't greet her. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't even ask her name. He simply said, in the calmest, coldest voice she had ever heard, "You, my office." Now, Lena's heart dropped. She looked around to see if he meant someone else. But his eyes were locked on her, strong enough to make her bones feel weak. She followed him down the hallway, trying to keep her steps steady. The entire floor watched them walk into the CEO's office, as if they were watching someone enter a courtroom where the judge had already decided the verdict. The moment the door closed behind them, Adrian didn't sit. He didn't gesture for her to sit either. He simply turned toward her with a look she couldn't read. Fear, anger, recognition. She couldn't tell. The silence was too heavy, sir. She whispered softly, clutching her bag tighter. His jaw tightened. He spoke without hesitation. "You're fired." The words slammed into her chest like a punch. She stumbled back a little, unable to breathe properly. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. When she finally found her voice, it came out weak and confused. What did I do?" Adrian's eyes didn't soften. "You know what you did?" "No, I don't," Lena said, shaking her head quickly. "I've never done anything wrong. I haven't even spoken to you before." Something flickered in his eyes. Not softness, pain. Not anger, hurt. And then, just as fast, it vanished under that icy mask again. "You weren't loyal," he said sharply. Lena felt her stomach twist. Loyal? Loyal to what? She did her job. She stayed late almost every day. She cared about her work more than she cared about herself sometimes, sir. "I don't understand." He stepped closer. close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. She froze as his eyes held hers with a strange intensity. "You don't remember me?" he said quietly. Lena felt her breath tremble. She swallowed hard. "No, I don't think we've ever exactly," he said bitterly. "You don't remember anything." His voice broke, not loudly, but in a way that made her heart twist painfully. She whispered, "Have we met before?" He didn't answer. He turned away, ran a hand through his hair, and exhaled like he was trying to pull himself together. When he faced her again, he was cold once more. "I won't explain myself," he said. "Security will escort you out." Lena's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She didn't try to defend herself. Her dignity was all she had left. She simply nodded slowly and whispered, "Understood." When she walked out of the office, people stared with wide eyes. Some looked shocked. Some looked sorry. Some looked scared for their own jobs. Lena kept her head high, even though her entire world felt like it had shattered. She packed her things calmly, ignoring the burning in her throat and the shaking in her hands. But inside, her heart was breaking. Not because she lost her job, but because of the way Adrian had looked at her, like she meant something, like she had hurt him, like he knew her in a way she didn't understand. As she walked toward the exit, she kept replaying his words. "You don't remember me?" What was he talking about? When could they have met? And why did he look at her like she was the person who ruined something important? Outside the building, the cold wind hit her face. She clutched the small box of her belongings and stood on the pavement, not knowing where to go. She needed a new job immediately. She needed money for her mother's treatment. She needed stability. But all she felt was confusion and the lingering heat of his eyes. She walked to the bus stop and sat down, hugging the box. People rushed by, living their normal lives, unaware of how her life had fallen apart in less than 5 minutes, as she tried to breathe through the pain. She remembered one thing, something from long ago, something unclear, a night, a balcony, a man, a warm voice, a moment she had buried because it was too fleeting, too mysterious, too unreal. A moment she never told anyone about. Was that connected to him? No, she told herself. It couldn't be. That was years ago. The man didn't even tell her his name. He disappeared before sunrise. That moment was supposed to stay in her past like a dream. But Adrian's eyes, they held the same quiet fire she remembered from that night. She shook her head. "No," she whispered to herself. "It can't be." She forced her mind back to reality. She had to think. She had to find a way to support her mother. She had no choice. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, stood up, walked home with trembling legs. She didn't look back at the building. She didn't want to. But Adrian, standing in his office, staring out of the window, watched her walk away. His fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. His throat was tight. His chest hurt. He had waited 2 years to find her again. And now that she stood in front of him, he had broken everything instead. He whispered to himself, "Why didn't you remember me?" His voice cracked, and he slammed his hand against the glass, breath shaking. He didn't want to feel anything, but feelings had already taken control. He paced the room, trying to fight the ache inside him. His father had warned him not to trust anyone from the old staff, especially someone named Lena. He had believed him. He shouldn't have. But anger and heartbreak had mixed, and he reacted without thinking. Now he regretted it. But regret was useless. She was gone. The day dragged painfully. He couldn't focus. He kept hearing her voice, seeing her eyes, remembering that balcony moment that changed everything for him. Meanwhile, Lena spent the entire day searching for jobs online, calling old colleagues, sending applications, and trying not to break down. Every time she remembered his face, her chest tightened with confusion, frustration, and something she didn't want to admit, an old warmth she thought she had forgotten long ago. When night fell, she sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her mother's hand and forcing herself to smile. "Everything will be okay," she whispered. "I'll figure it out." Deep inside, she wondered about him. Why did he fire her so quickly? Why did he look hurt? Why did he say she forgot him? And why, after all these years, did her heart feel like it recognized him? She didn't know that Adrian hadn't stopped thinking about her either. And she didn't know what would happen the next morning, because the next morning was when his secretary would storm into his office, and everything would change. The next morning at Harverland Technologies, the office was unusually quiet. The air felt heavy, as if everyone sensed the storm brewing behind closed doors. Lena's absence was noticeable. Her desk was empty, her chair neatly pushed in, her laptop gone. People whispered behind their hands, trying to guess why Adrian Locke had fired one of the company's most talented analysts. But no one dared approach him. Adrian himself appeared calm on the surface, seated at the head of the long conference table, reviewing reports, but inside he was restless. Sleep had evaded him almost completely. His thoughts kept returning to Lena Rojas, the woman he had fired yesterday. The woman he had been searching for 2 years. The woman who had haunted his memory since that night in Madrid. He stared out the window. The city sprawling below, his mind replaying every detail of her face. The way her hair fell over her shoulders, the warmth in her eyes. The sound of her laughter that had been so bright and fleeting. He had built walls around himself for so long, determined to never let personal feelings interfere with business. Yet all of those walls had crumbled the moment he saw her yesterday. He had acted too quickly. He had been angry, scared, and impulsive. And now, the guilt weighed on him like a storm ready to break. The silence of his office was shattered when Alara Quinn, his secretary, stormed in, slamming a folder onto his desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the otherwise quiet room. Adrian looked up, surprised, though he tried to hide it under a controlled expression. "Why did you fire Lena Rojas?" Alara demanded, her voice sharp but tinged with concern. Her dark eyes were unwavering, full of frustration and determination. She'd always been fiercely protective of the staff she trusted, and Lena was one of them. Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's not your concern," he said coolly, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "It is my concern," Alara shot back. "She's one of the best analysts in the company. She's smart, capable, and she doesn't deserve this. And you didn't even give her a reason." Adrian leaned back in his chair, the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. He kept silent, not wanting to admit the real reason. The truth that only he and his memory knew. Alara's voice softened slightly, though her eyes stayed sharp. "Look, she's one of the few people here who truly cares about this company. You can't just fire her because what? Because she reminds you of someone. Because you're angry. Think about the consequences." He didn't answer immediately. He wasn't used to people confronting him like this, especially not his secretary. But Alara had a way of speaking that cut through the fog of his anger and pride. "He could feel it, Alara," he said finally, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand more than you think," she said firmly. "I know her work. I know her dedication. And you just acted without thinking. Why? Tell me, Adrian. Why did you do this?" He took a deep breath, his fingers tapping nervously on the edge of his desk. He wanted to tell her the truth, but it was complicated, messy, and personal. And yet, he knew that keeping it a secret now would only make things worse. "She was involved with my father's administration," he said finally, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "That's all I needed to know." Alara's eyes widened. That's ridiculous. You didn't even check her file. You didn't verify anything." Adrian shook his head slowly. "I trusted my instincts. I thought—" His voice faltered. He thought he had done the right thing. But now he knew he had been blinded by his own fear, his own confusion. Alara opened the folder and tossed a few pages onto his desk. "Look at this. Your father never approved her termination. She spent years navigating impossible rules and still gave her best. She even turned down a promotion because she refused to be used as a pawn. And you fired her without knowing a thing. You don't understand what she sacrificed." Adrian stared at the papers, each word hitting him like a hammer. His chest tightened, his vision blurred slightly. He had acted impulsively, letting his anger and confusion guide his actions. He realized now that he had destroyed something valuable without understanding it. Elara stepped closer. And the worst part? Her mother is sick. Lena is the only one taking care of her and paying the bills. Without her job, her life could fall apart. The words struck him harder than any physical blow. He had never considered the human side of his decision. He had been consumed by pride, by anger, by an old grudge he didn't even fully understand. Now, facing the consequences, he felt a raw, gnawing pain. He ran a hand over his face, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions rising inside him. Anger, guilt, longing, recognition, something deep inside him shifted. A realization that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Alara's voice softened further. "Sir, do you even remember who she is?" Adrian froze. He closed his eyes, trying to focus. And then it hit him, the memory of Madrid 2 years ago. The memory of a night he thought he had forgotten but had carried silently in his heart. He remembered the city lights, a quiet balcony, the soft breeze brushing against his face. He remembered her laughter, her warmth. The way she had looked at him with those brilliant eyes that seemed to see everything and nothing all at once. He remembered how he had felt alive in her presence, how he had wanted to know her, to keep her close. And then she was gone, vanished without a trace before sunrise, leaving only a memory that haunted him. His chest tightened. He had looked for her everywhere, across countries, across companies, across years. And now, 2 years later, she had appeared in front of him at the company he had just inherited. And he had foolishly, cruelly fired her. Ilara's voice cut through the memory. "Sir, are you listening?" He snapped back to reality. "Where does she live?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. Elara blinked, surprised by the intensity in his tone. "And what will you do if I tell you?" Adrian rose from his chair, the anger and longing in his chest making him tremble. "I'm going to fix what I broke," he said firmly. "No matter what it takes." Lara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll tell you, but you have to promise me you won't scare her. You won't overwhelm her, and you won't make the same mistake again." "I won't," Adrian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I won't let her slip away this time." Elara handed him a piece of paper with Lena's address, and he took it with shaking hands. The weight of what he was about to do pressed on him, but he didn't hesitate. He had waited too long. He had searched too long. He couldn't lose her again. As he left the office, people stared at him. Some noticed his tense posture, the way his eyes were distant, yet fixed on one thought. Others whispered, sensing that something significant was happening. Adrian didn't care. Nothing else mattered. Meanwhile, Lena spent her day at home, unaware of the storm brewing around her. She scrolled through job postings, sent out resumes, and tried to suppress the anxiety gnawing at her. Every few minutes, she checked her phone, half expecting a message from the company, half expecting nothing at all. She was trying to survive, to stay strong for her mother, to keep life moving forward despite the crushing weight of uncertainty. She had no idea that Adrian had been thinking about her nonstop since the moment she left his office. She had no idea that he had realized the mistake he had made and that he was preparing to fix it. She had no idea that someone else knew her story intimately, someone who cared enough to push him to see the truth. Adrian drove through the city with determination, his mind racing with every detail he remembered about her. Her smile, her voice, the way she had handled challenges with grace, the strength that had always captivated him. He remembered the fear in her eyes when he confronted her yesterday, the confusion, the hurt. He wished he could take it all back. He wished he could go back in time to stop himself from acting on anger and fear instead of thought and understanding. As he approached her apartment building, his heart pounded. He parked a few blocks away, walked swiftly, trying to calm himself. Every step brought him closer to her. Every breath reminded him of the time they had lost. He reached her door, paused, and took a deep breath. He didn't know how she would react. He didn't know if she would forgive him. He didn't know if she even wanted to see him. But he knew he had to try. He couldn't let history repeat itself. Not this time. Inside, Lena continued her work, unaware of how close Adrian was. She had just sat down to review another set of resumes when the doorbell rang. She frowned. Visitors were rare at this hour. She walked to the door, curious but cautious. She opened it and froze. Standing on the other side was Adrian Locke. The man who had fired her less than 24 hours ago. The man whose presence had haunted her for years without her realizing it. The man she had once shared a fleeting, unforgettable night with in a city far away. He looked at her, his eyes soft now. No longer the cold CEO glare, but something raw and vulnerable. Something that made her chest ache and her heart stumble. "Lena," he said quietly, I need to talk to you." Her breath caught. You can't be here," she whispered. "I had to come," he said. "I made a mistake yesterday. A huge mistake." Lena's eyes narrowed. "You fired me. That's not a mistake. That's wrong," he interrupted gently. "Completely wrong. And I'm here to fix it." She felt her knees weaken slightly. She didn't know whether to be angry, scared, or something else entirely. She remembered that night in Madrid, the warmth. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains of Lena Rojas's small apartment, painting the room in a golden glow that did little to calm the storm inside her heart. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the small box of office belongings she had brought home yesterday. Each item, a pen, a notebook, a framed photograph from the office holiday party, felt heavier than the day before. Symbols of a life that had been taken from her in under 5 minutes. She hugged her knees to her chest and let out a slow breath. Her mother's breathing monitor beeped steadily in the background, reminding her of the responsibilities waiting beyond the walls of her apartment. Lena had learned long ago to hide her emotions behind a mask of calm. But yesterday's events had shaken her in ways she wasn't ready to confront. She tried to focus on the future. She had resumes to send, jobs to call, deadlines she had no choice but to meet if she wanted to survive this sudden change. Yet even as she sat with her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, her thoughts refused to stay on the task. Her mind kept wandering back to him, the new CEO, Adrian Locke. His eyes, his words, that fleeting look of recognition, as though he had been searching for her. As though she had some piece of his past that only she could hold. The knock on her door startled her, sharp and urgent. She froze, heart pounding. It was far too early for visitors. She didn't expect anyone, especially not someone from the company. And yet instinct told her that whatever awaited her on the other side was important, perhaps life-changing. She hesitated before moving toward the door. Each step heavy with anticipation and unease. When she opened it, her world tilted slightly. There he was, Adrian Locke, standing tall, his dark suit slightly rumpled as if he had hurried all the way from his office. His hair was slightly disheveled, his eyes intense but softer than she remembered. He looked at her not with authority or judgment, but with something raw, something vulnerable, something that pierced through the careful walls she had built around herself. "Lena," he said quietly, almost a whisper, I need to talk to you." Her breath caught in her throat. You can't be here," she whispered, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to remain calm. "I had to come," he said, stepping closer, but not too close. "I made a mistake yesterday. A huge mistake. I shouldn't have fired you. Not like that. Not without reason. Not without understanding you, without seeing the person you are, without knowing the sacrifices you've made." She crossed her arms defensively, but her legs trembled slightly. "You fired me," she said, the words flat but heavy with hurt. "That's not just a mistake. That's cruelty." "No," he said gently, his voice low, almost pleading. "It was stupidity. I acted without thinking. I let anger and fear guide me. I didn't know. I didn't see. I didn't understand. But I do now. And I can't. I can't let it stay this way." Lena's chest ached. She had wanted to hate him, to be angry, to move on without looking back. But the way he looked at her, the way his words trembled with sincerity, pulled at something deep inside her, a memory, a longing she thought she had buried years ago. He took a cautious step closer. "Do you remember Madrid?" he asked softly. "2 years ago, on that balcony?" Lena froze. Her heart skipped a beat. That night, the memory had always been like a dream, fleeting, almost unreal. She had remembered it alone, quietly, and never spoken of it to anyone. And yet, here he was, naming it, recalling it as vividly as she remembered herself. Her voice was barely a whisper. That was you?" He nodded, eyes fixed on hers. "It was me. I've never forgotten you. I searched for you everywhere. I didn't know your name, your place, your life. But I remembered you. Every detail, every laugh, every breath you took that night. And when I saw you yesterday, I panicked. I thought you would never come back into my life. And I let my fear ruin everything." Her chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. The man she had only known for a night, a brief, unforgettable night, was standing in her apartment, confessing that he had been searching for her for 2 years. She felt a strange mix of anger, confusion, and a yearning she had not allowed herself to feel in years. You fired me because?" she asked cautiously. "Because I was afraid," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "Afraid that you'd forgotten me. Afraid that I'd lost you forever. And I acted like a fool. I hurt you, Lena. And I can't forgive myself for it." Tears pricked her eyes. She had spent the night thinking about what she had lost, and now she realized she wasn't the only one. He had lost something too. Something intangible but vital. And it scared her that she still felt that connection, that pull, that invisible thread that had bound them 2 years ago. Why? Why now? She asked, her voice trembling. "Why come here? After everything?" "Because I couldn't stay silent," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Because I had to see you. Because I had to tell you the truth before it was too late again. I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet. I needed you to know." Lena's mind spun. She wanted to step back, to close the door, to protect herself from getting hurt again. But her body wouldn't obey. Something inside her, some part of her heart she hadn't acknowledged in years, rooted her to the spot. She looked at him and saw not the cold CEO who had fired her, but the man who had haunted her dreams, the man who had lingered in her memory with warmth and longing. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't say anything," he replied. "Just listen. Just know that I made a mistake, and I want to make it right. With your job, with your life, with us." Her heart skipped a beat. "Us." She echoed almost disbelievingly. "Yes," he said, his voice earnest, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that left her breathless. "I felt this connection with you since the first moment I saw you. That night in Madrid, it was real. It wasn't a dream. And yesterday, seeing you again, I realized I've never stopped feeling it. I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't want to." She swallowed hard. Her chest tightened. The memories, the longing, the warmth. All the suppressed emotions she had buried for years surged forward in an overwhelming wave. She had tried to protect herself, tried to stay practical, tried to stay alive for her mother, tried to focus on work. But now, standing in front of him, listening to his confession, she realized that logic and duty could not erase the heart. Adrian's hand moved slowly, hesitantly, until it was close to her cheek. He didn't touch her yet, but the gesture was deliberate, tender, full of longing and restraint. Her breath caught, and she felt the heat rise in her chest. The distance between them was small, but it felt like an eternity. "You don't have to forgive me now," he whispered. "Just let me stay. Let me be here. Let me prove that I'm not the man who hurt you yesterday. I want to make it right." She felt tears sting her eyes. She wanted to say no, to run, to protect herself from more heartache. But the sincerity in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, the familiarity in his presence, it was impossible to resist. Her hand trembled slightly as it lifted, almost reaching toward him, almost bridging the gap that had been years in the making. She began, then faltered. Words escaped her. Her heart raced, threatening to overtake her reason. She felt exposed, vulnerable, alive. She remembered the night in Madrid, the connection that had sparked and disappeared before it could ignite. And now she felt it returning stronger than ever. Adrian's eyes softened. He leaned just slightly closer, giving her the space to decide. Respecting the hesitation in her body, but the tension between them was electric. His voice was low, full of emotion. I've waited 2 years for a second chance. I won't waste it. I won't let fear or pride or anger take it away again. She stepped back slightly, closing the space just enough to regain control, yet her heart refused to retreat. It's too fast, she whispered. We barely know each other now. You can't expect. I don't expect anything, he interrupted gently. I just want to be honest. I want to be near you. I want you to know that you matter to me more than I can say. And if you're willing, I want to try. Just try. Lena's chest heaved with a mixture of emotions, fear, longing, hope, disbelief. She realized that all the anger she had felt yesterday, all the hurt, all the confusion, were now mingled with something dangerously close to desire. Something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Adrian's hand hovered near her face, his breath soft, his eyes locked on hers. She could feel the pull, the invisible thread that had always connected them, pulling tighter with each heartbeat. Her mind screamed caution, yet her heart whispered otherwise. Suddenly, a cough from her mother's bedroom snapped them both back to reality. Lena stepped back immediately, covering her face with her hands for a moment. The spell of the moment broke, but the intensity lingered. Adrian swallowed, forcing his emotions back under control, though his eyes never left hers. I'm not going anywhere, he said softly, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Not this time. I'll wait. I'll give you time. I'll do whatever it takes. Lena looked at him, a mixture of hope and fear in her gaze. Tomorrow, she whispered, almost to herself. Come tomorrow. Adrian nodded, a small, genuine smile touching his lips for the first time in years, not the cold, controlled smile of the CEO, but the one she remembered from that balcony in Madrid. I will, he said. I promise. She closed the door slowly, leaning